Welcome to our weekly Quran study at Always Receiving Nur. We will continue to explore Surah 13 together. And Sister Yamina is with me. I will turn the mic to her, and inshallah we'll have a beautiful session. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Welcome again to Always Receiving Nur's weekly classes on Surat Al-Ra'd. May we always be open, bi'idhnillah, to receiving the light of divine guidance and His grace and rahmah, inshallah, that we will find, we know, is contained in this surah that will be sent, inshallah, that is sent in this surah. And may we live, may we commit to live with that guidance, inshallah. That's the intention. اللهم افتح لنا أبواب حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. So last week we studied the second ayah of Surah Al-Ra'd, and just to remind ourselves, so I will repeat the first and second ayah with the English meaning, interpretation of this ayat, let's say. So it started with Alif Lam Mim Ra. Those are the ayat of the book, and what your Rabb has sent down to you is the truth. Yet most people do not believe. God is He who has raised up the heavens without any support that you can see, and then He is established on the throne, and He has made the sun and the moon subservient to His laws, each running its course for a term set by Him. He regulates all that exists. He makes the ayat clear of meeting your Rabb. And I would really, really appreciate if we have some kind souls who would share, remember, not necessarily a summary, but some points of what we have benefited from these two ayats so far, inshallah. If you kindly would share with us.
Should I start?
Yes, please.
I remember the last time so the first, I wasn't there, but the last time I listened to it, and I thought it's about things that we already know, right? And so, yeah, I see that the sun is rising, and I see that the moon is coming in the evening. You know, it's these things that come, that I always think about the planets and really the thing that we always see. And I thought, yeah, okay, we know that. And then after this, I prayed, and I thought, but I don't pray as if I know that. So this was kind of the most amazing thing for me, that this surah is actually talking very much about, at least so far, talking about the things that if we really take them not for granted, they change our lives.
Yeah, that's a very powerful point, because usually we say we expect it somehow, as if we expect something special. That expectation is assuming that what we see and interact with every day is not special, as if just because it's there, we take it for granted, and so we don't see how special it is, how miraculous it is, how unbelievable. Like when we stop and reflect, it's just beyond what we can grasp, beyond our imagination. Just you remain in awe of the majesty and the glory and the compassion and lovingness and the rububiyyah, the taking care of creatures on earth. And also we talked about the sizes are also mind-boggling. Like you feel so tiny, yet you receive all this attention from Rabbul Alameen. It's just very, very humbling, very, very, you feel full of gratitude and almost like our hearts can't contain the gratitude that is really due to such hospitality, such benevolence, let's say. Thank you, Andrea. Any other sharings, inshallah? Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
So I feel that our purpose in this transient world should be to find our creator, who our Rabb is, and I guess we can do that by finding the qualities of the Rabb in everything we come across, the creational ayah, or any event that happens to us. So our mission should be to decipher see the Asmaul Husna in everything.
And how is it relevant? Like, I would like to say maybe why would that be our mission? Just I want you to explain more, to open up and unpack what you already said. Why is it so important to?
I think if I can jump in here, following up on what Fariha has just said, what I feel like what she just said connects with the end of verse 2. In my translation, it reads as, clearly does he spell out these messages, these signs, ayat, so that you might be certain in your innermost that you are destined to meet your sustainer. After having talked about these signs all around us, the verse is saying that these signs are being spelled out to us so that we can be certain that we will meet our sustainer. And that's trying to say that this world is transient, and what we should be taking from this world is that connection, that certainty of meeting our sustainer, and that maybe opens up to Asma al-Husna.
And our sustainer is like the only anchor in this world. The only everything is pointing to that realm. The only realm that is permanent. Everything else is impermanent. And so we talked also about he regulates everything and makes the ayat clear. At the end of the second ayah, which يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرَ يُفَسِّرُ الْآيَاتِ. And we said, how does he make the ayats, the signs clear? By making that tadbir by wisely planning and ordering all that exists. So when I reflect, go out and look at them and reflect on the creation, the way things are coming into being, the way they've been created, then in that tadbir, in that planning and regulation and ordering, I see the ayat clearly. So there is a rahmah here. I see the rububiyyah clearly. So everything is created. Another way of saying it is that everything is created in a way, everything means being, things, phenomena, all activities in the world, in a way that it is clear that their maker is one, the regulator is one, the orderer, the master of the universe is one, that the throne, the arsh of power belongs to him alone. And so wherever we look, consider, indicates and points to that one single power, one single center of governance. And the example we took was the example of water that will show up in the fourth ayah. And we looked at how water, and when we say water, when we say anything actually, water, flower, think of a flower event, water event. And where did I get this way of saying this terminology from? It's in physics, in quantum physics, more correctly, because everything is continuously and constantly changing and in motion, you can't really talk about a particle, because what you call a particle, some of them live a very short time. Very short time means in a second, there are thousands of the generations of that particle. So you call it a particle event. And even things that we think are stable, actually they're always constantly in motion. So it's called in physics, rather than particle, the more like a particle event. And so this water is water event or water phenomena or water activity, because actually water is not static sitting there. It's always in interaction with everything. That's true for all of us, for every being in the world, even the most solid static thing like a mountain or a rock. It's actually always things around it are always interacting with it. And so that water, when we reflect, and so when we reflect and we intentionally look at it, then we realize that it doesn't exist on its own sitting there. Interaction with other beings, and then we see how it enters every living beings, we said, and acts in all of them so skillfully, without mistakes ever, as though it knew all of the anatomies and the physical, biological, chemical constitutions of all the being it interacts with. And so this is just something amazing. Like, you stop and you said there is only one way to make sense of this, and that's what the Quran is teaching us, is that it is acting at the command of someone who knows everything, sees everything, hears the needs of everything, and sends this water and is the regulator of the laws of creation of everything. And so this water is acting in his name, following his will, command, his laws. And so it's pointing to a Rabb, to a sustainer who knows everything and governs everything. And if we don't accept this option, this perspective of things, this way of looking at things, this way of looking at things as ayat, which is actually, I said it the other way around, this way of looking at things so that you realize that they're actually ayat, they are pointing something beyond them, then we would have to claim that water itself is the seat of all this power, knowledge, and mercy, and regulation, and ordering, and all what's going on there. And that just doesn't make sense, because water, being as lifeless as it is, being as unconscious as it is, in that lifelessness, in that being unconscious, but yet, rather than that, yet interacting with so much consciousness and being the means for life to come into being, that contrast, let's say, acts as an area. It's as if the water in the way it is, and in the way it behaves, is speaking to us and telling us that it doesn't make sense that I am doing it. I cannot be doing this. And that's called tasbih in the Quran. It's making its tasbihat that way. And so it's glorifying, it's and so what does this mean is that water is that dynamic being that is always in motion, always in interaction with other beings, because I emphasize this because usually we forget and we think of things as separate from each other and independent of each other. But the moment you wait for a little time and you see that things are flowing and changing and interacting, and in that activity that we will see the activity of Rububiyyah. That activity is the area to Rububiyyah. And it is as though water in that active, in its active being, speaks to those who have the wisdom to understand its language. The language of sign. All languages are signs. I'm making noises to someone who doesn't understand English. This is just noises. But actually, if for those who understand English, this is meaningful language. And so it is with the language of the creational ayat. And it is the Quran that is teaching us to understand and listen and make sense of the creational ayat's language. And how they are talking about the Rabb, and how water, for instance, is telling us that Rabb, the one who is employing this water, is the only giver of life. He is the one who is powerful, all-knowing, merciful. And water, what it does, it is as though it is testifying that whatever it enters is the throne of Rububiyyah. It is the Rububiyyah. And so we, inshallah, will be able to confirm when we look at water this way, when we interact, when we learn to listen and understand what water is saying to us, how it is speaking in its way of being, in its hal, then inshallah we will be able to confirm that water is a beautiful throne of our Rabb, as it is said in ayah 7 of Surah Hud 11, which is Surah 11. It's just كان عرشه على الماء. That's all only. So it's Surah 11, ayah 7. كان عرشه على الماء. His throne was established on water. And we said his throne is the throne, the seat of power, the place where we see the divine names, we see and make this, because it is made in such a way that it proclaims its maker. It proclaims its maker and glorifies him, making tasbih, nothing else. I cannot be doing it myself. I'm not doing it myself. Water, it's lifeless, it's unconscious, And so when I look at it and ask it, if I ask it, are you doing it, water? Water, the way it looks at me, saying, come on, like, be reasonable. I cannot be doing all this. I don't have life. How can I be a source of life? Like, and so I say, okay, you don't have life, so where is this life coming? And so water smiles, haha, now you got it now. So listen to me, follow me where I'm entering, what I'm doing. You will understand. I will show you the way. And it's like almost like you can see a cartoon where water is guiding us and showing us, you see, I'm interacting with this earth. Earth also doesn't have life. And this seed, you know, it doesn't have life. Yeah, they say there is DNA in this, but you know what? DNA is also made of matter. The walls are made of sugar and this and that. Okay. And so if we understand the language, we will understand how they make this. They say, we have nothing to do with what's going on. We are only acting at the command of someone who regulates everything, knows everything. He's the one who is sending us. He is. It's like they are the postman. The gift is coming from someone else. I'm only bringing it to you. And actually, the postman is only a metaphor because there is still a postman. Here, the water itself is a gift as well. It is the gift, and it is a means to other gifts. So it's a little bit more complicated than that, but for an introduction of the concept, I'm simplifying it, but I hope I'm not trivializing the concept. So it's not like water is doing something, and we did talk about it. I don't know if it was the second or third week when we looked at some verses, some ayat in the Quran that says, لا يخلقون شيئا وهم يخلقون. These things, water and whatever is given life through water, cannot create or make anything. Water cannot create anything because it itself is being created. It itself needs to be sustained. It itself needs the laws of keeping the molecules together. It doesn't have that strength or that power or that knowledge or the eyes to see. In another ayah in Surat al-A'raf, it says it doesn't have eyes to see or hands to hold or anything. So it's beautiful how they become like friends that will help us and guide us through life, through the meaning of everything, mashallah. So then we will understand that really, really, water is such a beautiful, beautiful throne of God's, of Rububiyyah. It's almost like a mirror that is so transparent. You see everything. You see through that. For instance, it's amazing that this last everything the Quran says we give life through water. We made everything living through water, but water itself doesn't have life. Subhanallah. So He made it easy for us. So water and all the activities it is involved in, they are all creational ayat, reciting the praises of their Rabb and making tasbihat. And water is sent down, but the Quran uses the same terminology. Tanzil, nazzala, nunazzilu min as-sama'i. It says, we send from the sky water, and it says we send the book, we send the Quran, the same terminology is used. And so water is sent down from the sky, but not only from the sky. It is sent down from Rahmah. It is sent with Rahmah and from Rahmah, so much that it is as though water is embodied Rahmah. People, even when it rains, especially when it's hot and people need water, when it rains, they say, oh, it's raining Rahmah. Because it's so transparent, humble. It does not do like us, you know. We say, I am doing it. Water is not like that. Water says, you know, I'm not doing it. I'm only a means. I mean, not even a means, actually. I'm only a mirror. Mirror is better metaphor, because means, as though we can get stuck in the means, as though the means has some power or something, but water has nothing. That's why in that lack of power and the lack of attributes to achieve those results, that lack is the clue, the hint that makes us go up and realize that water is only a sign. We see the reflection of the abundance. And so the next area, which is the third area, it says, وهو الذي مد الأرض وجعل فيها رواسي وأنهارا ومن كل الثمرات جعل فيها زوجين اثنين يغشي الليل النهار إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. So, and it is he who has spread the earth wide and placed on it firm mountains and running rivers, and created thereon two sexes of every kind of fruit. And it is he who causes the night to cover the day. Truly, in all this, there are ayaat, there are signs for people who reflect. قوم يتفكرون. So like in ayah 2, this Quranic ayah is also referring to the activities in the world, something in the world, as ayat, as signs. And it is inviting us to reflect on those ayat in the world. So here I'm going to repeat this, but I'm repeating it because it's so important. I almost want to stop here, because, especially because I don't get feedback, so I'm not sure how much, if you realize how important this is. How important not only in realizing what the Quranic message is, what the Quran is, but the Quran is something that is coming as guidance, remember, and healing in our life, and a guide to our life. So it's very important that I know how to interact with it, because otherwise it's there, but I don't know how to benefit from it. And so this is important for us to make sense of our life, to make sense of what's going on around us and inside us. You know, the ayat are في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم, in the outer world and in the inner world. And so reading, or I prefer listening, but both of them is about making sense and understanding and grasping and communicating. So listening to this ayah that I just read right now, this Quranic ayah, this ayah of the Quran, 13:3, Surat Al-Ra'd, third ayah, requires that we go out in the world and actually read and listen to the creational signs outside in the world. This is what the Quran, this ayah is inviting us to do, is saying, this is what God is telling us, this is what I did. And these are ayat for those who reflect. So what does it mean? Just because I heard it, it does not unfold, it does not, this ayah does not unfold in my heart, it does not descend, it is not sent. The meaning does not reveal reveal itself to me until I go and actually go and check. That's what it means. This is an invitation. This is an invitation to reflect on how the earth has been spread out and the mountains. And of course, as we mentioned last week, there are different ways of looking at it as a lay person or as a scientist, or different. We can look at things in different ways. One way to understand it is, for instance, we can look at the mountain as an artist, and the artist is going to look at the beauty, or as a earth scientist, so going to study it, or as someone who is just enjoying themselves around. In any case, it's all about reflecting this mountain in its outward appearance, and because mountains, if you studied some earth science, are like trees. There is as much branches outside, there are as many roots down. Actually, for the mountains, there is only a small part out and a deeper part, it is thought, down. And they are still in motion. Everything is still in motion. Rock formation and everything is still going on in the world. At least that was what I learned many years ago, decades ago, actually. Those, how were they called? Tectonic or what? The plates, and there's still activity going on very deep on Earth, and that's why there's still metals and minerals and things that's still being baked and stored and brought up, actually, usually within the mountains. Everything that is cooked up, let's say, in this very hot temperature with very high pressures, and then they are all sent up through the mountains, and that's why usually we find all these treasures, these metals and minerals and stuff that we need, and even hard rocks in the mountains. But whether we know this or not, the point is to go and reflect. And if I don't go out and look at these things and reflect about them, we said before, do you think that I would have read this ayah? So you see how intermingled the ayat are. I cannot separate this ayah from the creational ayat it's referring to. And I cannot have read this ayah fully. Yes, I have read it, but I cannot have read it fully if I don't go out in the world. It's like I have a map, or it's a map rather than a picture. So I have a map of a place, and I think I know the place, but I never use the map to go and look around in the place. It says in the map, there is a legend, and it says, there is a garden in this corner. In this garden, there are flowers, but there is also a vegetable garden. There is a house there. Someone lives there. There are cats, and I say, okay, I know everything. You don't know anything. Yes, you know something. Sorry, you know something. You know about it, but you don't know it. And the difference in between is like, I know about coffee, but I never seen it or smelled it or tasted it. I never drank it. So can I say that I know coffee? No, you heard about coffee. You read about it, but that's not knowing coffee. And here is the same. And invitation to actually go and do the work. And the work is to reflect. And to reflect on what? On the signs. And where are these signs? Out there. The earth, the mountains, the rivers, everything's being created in pairs, the night and the day. And you say, are they really ayat? Or you will only know when you go and reflect. There's no other way to know that. So this is very, very important. That's why in the Islamic tradition there are people who called the creation the Quran. So the Quran is speech, is divine speech, God speaking. And so God speaks in words as well as in action. And we are, it's communication when I say speech. And we are used to this. We communicate. I don't know if I haven't studied myself, but those who studied communication, they say that's only 7% is of our communication is words. The rest is not only our actions, but also our expression and, you know, and face expression and all this are non-verbal, let's say, communication. So if we have been given the capacity, the ability to communicate in verbally and non-verbally, that is also a sign that whoever gave me this ability, he gave me this ability in order to understand that the different kinds of communication in the world. So it's not hard to understand that the creational ayat are non-verbal communication of our Rabb to us. And this is very, very important because that's the message of the Quran, and that if we miss that, I cannot unlock the Quran. The Quran won't speak to me here and now. And if the Quran doesn't speak to me here and now, that means that the ta'wil al-hadith, that the wisdom that was given to Yusuf alayhi salam, that he, even in the ugliest situation, in the most painful situation, the hardest of situation, he could see the rahmah, he could see compassion and mercy and purpose, was because he was aware that everything was an ayah. But that's not enough. He knew the language. He could read the meaning. They were like clear mirrors to him. Everything was like a clear mirror. So this is a very key concept that the Quran is pointing to. The Quran is teaching us. So the creational ayat in this ayah of the Quran is a kind of divine communication, divine speech. It is the ayat out there are a Quran as well. The Quran, as we know, the written Quran, this ayah is almost like the voice, the tongue, making those speechless creatures, beings in the world speak. Like if they could speak, this ayah would be their speech. It's speaking on their behalf, telling us what they're saying. It's the interpreter, the translator. And so God is telling us in the Quran that He communicates with us through His creative activity in the world. He said, look at them, they, as in this Quran is ayat. So if, was there someone who was going to say something?
Somebody just came in.
Oh, okay. So if you are interested in grasping the message of this ayah, I'd invite you to go out in the world and as this ayah instructs. Because what's the point in me telling you again, like last week? Last week was easier for me because it's something that I know more about, because it's about the physics of space and things. This is more something that you learned in science, but you don't need any scientific knowledge, as I said before. Just go and immerse yourself in that experience. So to me, like a proper tafsir of this ayah, justice to it than me speaking to you here, would require a field workshop.
Field trip.
A field trip, we would all go out, and everyone would have the opportunity to follow the instructions of this ayah, the third ayah of Surah Al-Ra'd. And so we will immerse ourselves in that experience, in the meaning of the ayah, the meaning of these beings, the mountains and the earth and the mountains and the rivers flowing. And we'll see them, we'll hear them, we'll smell them, we'll feel them, we'll listen to them. Listen to them, like who was it? Whose prophet was it? Who was it? Sulaiman's father, who was making tasbihat with the mountains?
Yeah, Dawood.
It was Dawood alayhi salam, right? So Dawood alayhi salam, we are told in the Quran, used to make tasbihat together with the mountains. One way of making tasbihat could be, you know, when you have two mountains next to each other, don't know if you tried this as a child, when you shout, the echo comes back to you. And that's just amazing. Kids get really, really excited with that. And if you do it with awareness and mindfulness, then you will realize that this is part of the tasbihat. Subhanallah, what kind of regulation, what kind of tadbir, that voice sound travels and comes back, and the mountain is sending it back to you, and it's as though you're playing games with it. And so Dawood alayhi salam used to make tasbihat with the mountain. So the mountain, what does it mean? It means that the mountain is making tasbih, and he's joining them in that tasbih. How could he join them? It means he understood their tasbihat. He heard it. He was listening to them. He was hearing them. He understood their language, and so he could partake in that. Subhanallah. So that would be a tafsir that will do justice to an ayah like this, rather than, or everyone would go and then we would come and share our reflections on those ayahs. Inshallah. In this ayah, there is something I wanted to share with you because it was also the choice of the language. It says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي مَدَّ الْأَرْضَ. It is he who has spread the earth. And this مَدَّ الْأَرْض, you can spread the table, you know, like a tablecloth or something. مَدَّ السُّفْرَةِ in Arabic. And it's the same. Madda can be used in different contexts. But it's what's nice about it is that it has the meaning of preparing as well. So he spread the earth and prepared it for you. So there is this, the rububiyyah and the compassion and the very close, like, you know, when you're waiting, parents expecting a baby, and they get the room ready and everything. It gave me that sense of feeling. It feels like so endearing. So when I was looking at the meaning of this ayah in a tafsir, because sometimes it's translated as he has made the earth flat, which here does not mean that, but I realized it was because in other parts of the Quran it says, rather than madda here, which is literally spreading out, preparing, it says sutihat, for instance, in Surat Al-Ghashiyah, Surah 88, Ayah 20. And if you are using a hard copy, then you can start from Ayah 17. It starts actually before, like, haven't you seen? Do they never reflect? Do they not reflect on the sky, how it was raised on high? The mountains, how firmly they are reared. The earth, how it is spread out. And some people, because it says here, سُطِّحَت, is like making it flat, so that it's easy to live on. So when I was checking Tafsir al-Kabir by Fakhruddin Razi, this is a scholar who lived in the 12th century. I found something interesting and I wanted to just share it with you. I was sharing it with Isra, and just before this. He says, if it is said, do we spread out, indicate that it is flat? Remember, this is 12th century. We would respond, yes, because the earth, even though it is round, it is an enormous sphere. And so each little part of this huge sphere, when it is looked at, appears to be flat.
That's what Fakhruddin Razi
So
said.
Fakhruddin Razi is saying, God said He made it, prepared it for us and spread it out. And in some verses, yes, it says we flattened it because it is yes, it is round. Yes, it is a sphere. However, it's such a big sphere that each piece of this sphere is large enough to feel flat for us. And I thought that was nice to share with us because, you know, maybe at school you heard about the myth of, you know, the earth being a disc and flat. And yes, there were people who believed that. However, well before they learned it in Europe, people knew that it was round and a sphere. And otherwise, the times for the salat wouldn't have been calculated properly. They are calculated according to a sphere. So I thought that was a nice thing. And he carries on and he says, as that is the case, this will dispel what they mentioned of confusion. Like people are, he's saying, so does it mean that the earth is flat or is it round? So that time in the 12th century, this is mid-12th century, they were concerned, there were questions like this, and he's saying, no, it is a sphere, but it is so big that small pieces of it are flattened, and so the word flat still is useful. And it says the same is with the interpretation of, and the mountains are made as pegs. And in this ayah also it says, and the mountains had been made firm. And he says he called them autad or pegs, even though these mountains may have large flat surfaces. I mean, you can go on the mountain and you can build a town, or if you go to. But it's still, so he says, the same is true in this case. In this case, just so. It doesn't mean that the mountain is a flat entity, but it has some flat areas in it, and so it is for the earth. And I wanted to share this because it made me smile. I thought it was nice. And if you don't have something to share or comment, I will go on to the next area, which is the the fourth ayah. استعيذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وفي الأرض قطع متجاورات وجنات من أعناب وزرع ونخيل صنوان وغير صنوان يسقى بماء واحد ونفضل بعضها على بعض في الأكل إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يعقلون. And there are in the land neighboring plots, gardens of vineyards, cornfields, palm trees in clusters, all watered with the same water, yet we make some of them taste better than others. Truly, there are ayat in this for people who reason. So you see, before it was for people who reflect, يتفكرون, and this is لقوم يعقلون. And here it's saying same water, different tastes. And I would like to invite you to think about what do you make of this? Same land, same water, different tastes. What do you feel about this way of looking at things? Does anything come to you? Would you like to share? And it says there are ayats in this. Where is the ayah in this? It's okay if you can't see the ayah. What is it that's bothering you? I mean, when we hear something, we learn this in Surah Yusuf. Sometimes something bothers us, or we don't know how to resolve it, and that is also an ayah. So it's speaking to us in that way as well, because the meaning is going to emerge and be born in the interaction. That interaction, my seeking the meaning, is a prayer that inshallah will be accepted. So when I don't understand, when I feel disturbed, when it doesn't make sense to me, that's an invitation to stop. To stop, and it's an interruption to my thinking that I take for granted. And so I say, okay, if this text is going to be taken as the point of reference, either I am not understanding it properly, that's also me, or my way, there is something that I'm taking for granted, and I'm trying to understand this text and getting what it's saying, but it's not making sense to me because of my taking for granted perception of the world, or of thinking, of logic, or because this is yaqilun, and to me this is almost it's an approach, but we can almost say that it's a logic that it's teaching us as well. Anything to share? Just what comes to you first. I'm not asking for a solution or something, just sharing your first impression.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Wa alaikum salam, Tahsin.
I guess the first thing that comes to my mind, which may be where you're leading us to think, or maybe not, but is, I guess, the realm of multiplicity, and the way in which it corresponds to difference in human beings and languages. So it feels to me like it's an invitation to reflect on the different kinds of diversity and different kinds of creation, not just are being pointed to here.
That could be it. I mean, once you get this way of perceiving things, you can apply it to every. What are we learning here that I can take and apply it as your suggestion? Which I think makes sense to me too. So, but there is something, a way of looking at things that this is teaching us. And then once I have that way of thinking, then as you said, I can apply it to other things as well. That's nice, yeah. So it becomes my way of looking at the world. Okay, so, okay, go ahead, Tahsin.
Sorry, it sounded like there was another question there. So I guess I would just say that that thing that would be shared between the two examples would be perhaps that there is something that is being pointed to in this illustration of creation, where we see water and we see the fruits of that water, which is nature or life or diversity, but yet there is something that we don't see, and that is what gives or enables that diversity. And perhaps it's the fact that we don't see that is being pointed to.
Yes, I think you got your finger on it. You know, when I first read this, I thought, you know, typical the way we learn to think. Oh, this doesn't make sense. I mean, I know that this makes sense at another level, but the first thing I thought, I said, yes, it's the same water, the same land, but they are different plants. Of course, they will have different tastes. Even if it's the same, it's the same kind, the same species, like they're all grapes. There are so many kinds of grapes. So, of course, like, we take things for granted. But then I thought, what are you saying here? Let's apply the same thing again, the same criteria. Instead of just the same water and the same earth, let's take this approach to a different level.
So just one clarification here.
Yeah.
You feel that when you look at the verse, the key here is it describes first the diversity of the plants. You know, some of them are like this, some of them are like that, and clusters and that, different veins. And then the punchline or the key point here is that all of them watered with the same water, yet the results are different. Some are better tasting and other tasting. So that's the key point in the verse. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
I mean, first, you know,
immediately you had
the counter argument that came without even me thinking, because that's how we were trained, was, yes, but it's not only the water, there are so many other factors that are already different.
Yeah.
Okay, the seeds are different at least, the plant is different. But then I went down, okay, the plants are different means the seeds are different. Okay, look at the seeds, what are they made of? Let's apply the same thing. All these plants look different, but they are all made of seeds. Let's say the seeds are all different. The seeds are all made of the same basic materials, right? And someone may say, even you can go down and you say, they're all, you come down to the bare, the most basic constituents of everything, they're all atoms and electrons.
Your quantum training, you bring everything back to the subatomic
But
level.
even if you don't go down there, if you stay at the seeds, the material, the matter of the seeds, they are all the same matter. But there is a difference, and the difference is that's what Tahsin said, is the difference is not in the material thing, the difference is in the way those material things are arranged. They say, but the DNA is different. No, the DNA is made of the same material. It's only the way it's arranged is all different. So they are arranged differently. And that means that the same ingredients are used to create different products. And this means that the differences do not stem, the difference doesn't stem from the material ingredients, but some other factors like combination, like choice, and factors that require choice, that require will, that require a purpose. And then I came back to the ayah. What is it saying again? And it says, يسقى بماء واحد ونفضل بعضها على بعض. So it is watered with the same water, yet we prefer one over the other. So this nufaddilu is in the language also is assigned to purpose, to will, to choice. And so that's the factor that we can see. So I think it was really like, you didn't explain the whole thing, but you said the most important thing. And that's why they are ayah. Because they're pointing to something that I can't see. And so, this is so naive, like water is different, but everything else is, water is the same, but everything else is different. But say, just be patient. Water is the same, entering all these different things. Take the same, what you think is different, apply the same approach to them, the same logic to them, because it says يعقلون. Apply the same logic, and you will find that at the end, everything is made of the same ingredients, but the recipes are different. And so that recipe points to choice, to purpose, to will, to an unseen agency. And that's the unseen factor in all this. And that's why they are, subhanAllah, it's so elegant, so beautiful. And then you take this understanding, and like Tahsin said at the beginning, now use it with everything. Within plurality, you will always find that uniqueness and choice, and it's like all human faces, they're all in unique, in sameness. There is differentiation and uniqueness, and in differences there is something that goes back to sameness. Subhanallah, the way they are interacted, like human faces are all, you would think it's a face. They all look the same, two eyes, like nose, and like look the same. However, when you look at each face, each one is unique and different. And the difference is not in the material part, but choice. It is made a different way. There is choice, there is purpose. Nufaddilu points to choice. It's saying we choose, we choose to make one better than the other. In the English, that emphasis is lost. But we make one better than the other. But in we make doesn't have that strong. Here the verb is a verb. Nufaddilu, tafdil. Preferring one to the other is a choice. Requires will and purpose, because if one is made better, there is a purpose, something, there is a betterment, there is a striving for better. And I thought this was just subhanallah, mashallah.
So, like, one lesson that this verse is teaching us is that when we look, we can pay attention to how there is this immense diversity made out of very similar, almost the same elements, and we don't find things being made from the same water represents this general principle that we don't find in these things within themselves anything that would make that differentiation. You know, why does this plant become tomato and the other become grapes and the other
Since
becomes
they are all 80%, 90% water anyway.
yeah, and then and then DNA is the same basic material. What is it like? What is it in any of? There is no consciousness in the DNA. There is no consciousness in the water or soil, and it's
none of the ingredients.
Basic ingredients, basically arranged.
It's like all flour and sugar and oil, but one is a cake, one is a cookie, one all different. And if we apply this
somebody
to what
must be differentiating them.
You know, Tahsin, we can even apply this to not yet at the social level, which we can do, but here it's water in plant, but water in all living beings. It's the same water in all living beings. Yet, they have all different levels of life, levels of, they're all different creatures. But it's the same water. And even the human body is mostly made of water. SubhanAllah, there's no need to go to the atoms and electrons if it feels alien.
I guess it raises a difficult question once you move to human beings as the other creation. This question of making some better than others, that's a whole different, opens a new box of questions.
But here it's using the
yeah.
Here it's using nufaddilu for the plants, for the taste. And even the taste, actually, one is better, but like it does not specify which one is better, because what is better for you may not be the better one for me. So it's only an emphasis on they are different. One feels better to you, but I can't claim that what is better for me is universally, absolutely better, because you may not like it actually. So that's also nice, isn't it, Tahsin? It leaves it like, gives that openness. It's just so beautiful. The more you are, the more you're careful, and also there is a barakah, a blessing in the interaction, because the way you said it also opened another door. I had not it that way. And so now I'm looking at the ayah from your perspective as well. And so the more of us participate, the more perspective we get. And that's the barakah, they call it, the blessing of reading the Quran and benefiting from each other, because we are mirrors to each other. So the light coming from one mirror is not like if we have many mirrors in the room is going to be very lightish. And because they're going to reflect each other's light as well. Alhamdulillah. So, alhamdulillah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين آمين الحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you. السلام عليكم.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Yamina. Is there anybody else who wants to share any comments or questions? Okay, so thank you very much for joining us tonight, and thank you again, Sister Yamina, for leading the session. Inshallah, we look forward to meeting you next Wednesday again at this time. Inshallah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you.